you do not need everything within World of Tanks to be the best player, or at least to have an impact in some of the games that you'll be playing. But today's video is going to look at some of the best things that you can do from a standpoint of logistical stuff that you can do within the game to be able to better your chances of having a better game, and we're going to go through those now. So of course there are a few things that really do make the biggest impact, and I'm sure many of you are aware of them, but we're going to highlight some of the things that you need to think about when putting them on, and that is of course equipment. I see a lot of people that use equipment, regardless of what tank they're going to use the exact same equipment, which is of course not a good way of doing it. It should be tank specific. If you're going to use a specific piece of equipment, it should really tie into what the tank is all about. For example, if you're going to be playing an artillery and you're putting on a turret boost to your commander, then it really doesn't make much of a difference because you don't have a turret in an artillery, at least unless you're playing the French artillery, which do have a turret, but for all of the other ones, then no, it's not going to make any difference, so don't go doing stuff like that, which is of course pretty obvious, but there are some less obvious things that I think need to be talked about, and we're going to do that in today's video. So let's pick a tank that we haven't actually kind of really done any videos on. It's a brand new tank that I've got in my garage that I haven't played in a long time, and we've only just recently bought it back, or even bought it, which is of course the Jagdpanther 2. Now, the key thing that you want to do, which is what I'm hoping you guys will kind of think about next time you're joining in on a tank, is of course looking at the tank itself. Well, I'm playing a Jagdpanther. What are the key statistics of the vehicle? Well, it can go 55 kilometers an hour for a tank destroyer. That's pretty good. You know, you're not going to be able to see that in many tank destroyers, at least for the most part, especially as you get up throughout the tiers, because a lot of them kind of cap out about 30 kilometers an hour. Looking at things like the E4, the Jaeger, all of those sort of tanks, they all similarly have that same kind of top speed. So this one, you're not going to have to put on any speed boost equipment, at least unless you're going to go for a ramming build, which is a completely different question, and so we're not going to take that into account. But what you do want to do is have a look at the modules, then click Y or a triangle, I believe it is on PS4 or PS5, and then you can basically see what the key statistics of the vehicle, and this is something you want to do every single time you get a brand new tank, especially if you don't know anything about it, and if you haven't watched any reviews on YouTube or whatever you watch it on, then this is a fantastic way of kind of doing that for yourself and getting used to doing it for yourself, because you know, most of the best players, they don't need to jump onto YouTube or anything, at least not necessarily anyway, unless they're really trying to just see quickly what their tank setup is. But you can see on this that we have a lot of statistics to go through, and this is something that I think you need to be able to pick out the key ones. We're in a tank destroyer, so what sort of things do you need to think about? Well, it is the accuracy is one key thing. You need to look at the speed, you need to look at the armor profile, which we have a pretty easy armor viewer here to have a look at. You can see it's pretty well sloped, so you want to be wiggling side to side when you're playing it in game. But then what you also want to look at is things like gun depression. What's the rate of fire? Has it got a decent rate of fire to be able to perma-track people? Which is where you constantly hit someone's track before they can repair it, and so you can consistently deal damage over a period of time, and that's something you want to look at. So do you want to be doing that within the game when you're playing in it? And that's all of the sort of thing that you need to think about. With regards to this specific tank, well, you can see that we have a fairly decent accuracy, 0.32, that's not awful. We've got fairly decent rate of fire, 10 rounds a minute, 240 alpha damage, 2400 DPM, which is not necessarily very bad for a tier 8. We've also got 380 meters vision range. The one key thing that you'll probably notice about the tank is that it isn't very stealthy, 358 still concealment, which is that's pretty bad, to be honest, for the most part. You look at something like the AT-15, it's on the same kind of level, so it's not awful, but it's not good, and so you have to think about that. Do you want to boost down that camouflage or still concealment by putting on something like a advanced concealment? Now, with this tank, how would I actually set it up? Well, I think it is really key to have vision range. you can either do that in one of two ways. Do you want to be a more passive view range kind of base build where you put on advanced concealment, you don't have the increased view range, you just have the ability to stay hidden for longer, if that makes sense. So that is where it kind of comes in. They both have effectively the same kind of position where, yeah, they basically increase the difference between the view range and the concealment, but yeah, it depends whether you want to have an extended view range or whether you want to have basically a reduced concealment. So you're going to have the option of either both. But essentially what I will do is always run optics for the most part, especially if you have the silver to be able to do that. And this is leading into the next one, which is of course improved ventilation. Improved ventilation is one of those equipment slots that you definitely need within a lot of the tanks, as long as you have a kind of tank that can put that in. If you're not an open top tank, you won't be able to get it, but if you are an open top tank, you won't be able to get it, and if you aren't, you'll be able to have improved ventilation. So that's why some tanks do have that and some tanks don't. It's just a little hint there. So if you are ever playing in a tank and realise, hang on a minute, why aren't I getting improved ventilation? That's probably why. As far as the kind of third one we'd go with, well, the tank has good DPM, why not make it excellent? And we'll whack on advanced loader, meaning that the tank overall should be able to do a hell of a lot more damage, as well as being able to detect more opponents, which is something that when you're in a faster tank destroyer, because you're not necessarily going to be sat all the way at the back for the majority of the game, it's probably more important than something, say, like a Ferdinand, where you're relying on staying a little bit further back with the speed of the tank not being great enough to really push forward that quickly anyway. So not only have we got equipment, you can see what I'm doing in the background here is putting on the consumables, and this is something we always talk about within every single video, and that is picking the right consumables. Now, for the most part, this is the setup you want within playing any game, any tank, because this is the optimal one, at least in my opinion, because what it allows you to do is, obviously, you want to be able to repair all of your modules within your tank. So if you get tracked, you can just press X or square on PlayStation, and then you're repaired. You can pull back around that corner and stay out of vision from a lot of the opponents that you'll be coming up against. Whereas if you pick something like fuel over it, or any of the other ones like fire extinguisher, and boy oh boy, fire extinguisher is probably one of the most pointless things at the moment, because all it does is reduce your chance of getting caught on fire by 25%, or 20 or to 25, depending on which one you get. It really doesn't actually have much of a difference. That's the passive boost, and then obviously the active one is just reducing or pressing the button to be able to stop the fire. So it's no longer automatic, making it pointless for me anyway, because, you know, the amount of times you actually get set on fire is not actually that many times. Yes, you may have that game where you think, that's annoying, I didn't have a fire extinguisher, but those games are fairly rare, at least in the majority of tanks, and so you don't really need it whenever you're playing in it, so think about that. And that's something I always do. I never run fire extinguisher, not anymore. I used to before update 6.0 and all of the changes to the equipment and consumables, because it basically allowed you to not even think about it. It would be instantaneous, so you wouldn't lose any hit points pretty much from getting set on fire for the first time anyway, and that was always useful. Then of course we do have enhanced rations, which, trust me, is the biggest premium consumable you can put on your tank. It's one of the best things that you can possibly do. Increases your commander XP, which is the smallest bit of the boost, and then we have 10% crew performance boost, and that's passive, so that's constant. That allows you, that's essentially like having 2 improved ventilations within your tank when you use this. Just think about that for a minute. 10% to all of your different crew performance. So 10% faster reloading, 10% faster to be able to re-track your tank, so being able to actually repair your track. Then you've got the ability to fire faster, you've got increased view range, you've got all sorts of different things that come with the increased crew performance. And then when you actually activate the enhanced rations, it boosts it by a further 15%, and that lasts for 30 seconds within the game. And during that period you can boost up your view range, so if you're about to crest a ridge, or you know you're coming into combat soon, you can press that B button, you can press that circle button, I believe, on PlayStation. Sorry, I'm not that familiar. But yeah, that will essentially boost your view range, boost your DPM, all by 15% additional to the 10% crew performance. So it stacks, I believe, which is crazy. And so you'll be able to get a ridiculously faster firing gun. You'll be able to have much more view range. And you can see, just with the addition of it, I don't know if it does actually dynamically change or not. When we remove the crew performance, the consumable, I don't know if it does actually, but we'll have to kind of test that yourself. But basically, when you do put it on, it does increase everything when you're playing within the game, so make sure that you do that. Is something crucial. And then another thing is, of course, thinking about what premium ammunition you're using, which is, of course, another key kind of thing that a lot of people try and avoid. And although I do agree that premium ammunition is so expensive to play, and if you haven't got premium account, I can agree that, yeah, it does cost an arm and a leg. You can see here it's costing 4,400 per shell, and you're only doing 240 damage. And I don't know how much the standard rounds, yeah, it's almost 20 times the price to be able to fire those premium rounds. But in some cases, when you're in a clutch scenario where it is the difference between winning and losing because you didn't have enough penetration, it really is crucial to have premium rounds in your tank. So make sure that you carry those when you're playing in it. So do that and you'll have a much better time. Now, the next logistical thing that you can do with your tank is, of course, assigning a commander. And I see a lot of people picking the wrong commander perks for your tank. Now, am I saying that I'm an expert? I pick every single tank exactly how it should be for every tank I play. No, I'm not saying that because, to be honest, I swap around a lot of my crews and they're not necessarily exactly how I would put them if I had the ability to swap my to respec my crew every single time. But remember, it costs 90 gold to be able to respec your crew, so unless you're an absolute baller and you don't really care about having to respec your crew every single time that you transfer it, or if you just have an infinite amount of crews to be able to have across all of the different tanks within the nation that you're playing in, then I guess it's okay. But what I'm saying is that when you join into a specific tank, you should be picking tanks, or at least crucial bits of perks that you do need every single time. And we'll go through the key ones and the first three that you should always pick when you're playing in your tanks. Now, see a lot of people saying you don't need Sixth Sense. If you're listening to those people, there's a very situational place where you don't need Sixth Sense, and that's probably if you're going to be in a super aggressive tank, something like the Panzer 5-4, where you know whenever you're playing it, you're never not going to be spotted. And that is the only reason I would ever not take Sixth Sense. It provides you with so much information that, yes, initially you might go, oh, well, it tells me that I'm targeted when someone's looking at me. But think about it. Targeted only means that they're looking at you. If, say, in a second's time, someone just decides to look at you and then fire, they're going to hit you, you're going to lose health. What if, as soon as you got spotted, it lights up, tells you that there's at least someone out there that can see you and has line of sight on you and is able to shoot you if they actually look in your direction? That means that you can then pull back around the corner. People saying that Sixth Sense is not a crucial perk and it's not a perk you need, I don't know how to say this, but they're just wrong, in my opinion. It gives you so much information. There is no other crew perk as essential that gives you as much information. It tells you basically where the enemy team are. Say if you're at the end of the game and you get spotted suddenly and it comes up, lights up, tells you that someone's looking at you, you can then position where they're probably going to be on the map. If you don't have that, you have no idea. If you've pulled around a corner, you have no idea whether you were spotted before you went round that corner or after you went round that corner. With Sixth Sense, it allows you to pinpoint where you get spotted, which allows you to pinpoint where your opponent is, and then allows you to kind of work around that scenario, decide where you're going to go from there, whereas if you don't have it, you have no ability to really know when or when not you're spotted, unless you're kind of guessing, but you don't want to guess when you're kind of trying to carry the game or progress the game or whatever it is. You don't want that to be having to guess, and that is why Sixth Sense, I thought it's worth talking about it, it's worth telling you why it is so important, and really give you an argument as to to why you should always take 6 cents, and especially as your first perk within World of Tanks console Modern Armor when you're picking out your commander. So there we go. Of course, with the second one, I think there's no kind of real competition other than Born Leader, which gives you that 10% increase to skill effectiveness, so how well a skill. So for example, Green Thumb gives you a 10% increase to your vehicle's camo factor. When you use Born Leader on your crew, that then goes from 10% up to 11%. So it gives you 10% extra on every single skill. Similarly, Situational Awareness 6%, that goes up to 6.6%. So it gives you 10% boost to all of those. But that's not it. It also gives you, like we've talked about, that crew performance, as with the consumables and also the equipment, the improved ventilation. It's essentially 2 times a crew improved ventilation. So make sure that you put this perk on. It makes your tank so much better, so much more versatile, and it allows you to just basically be better than 90% of other people if they don't pick this perk or this within their tank, especially if they don't have consumables as well, and if they don't have equipment, then your reload is going to be so much better than theirs. Your vision range is going to be so much better, and basically everything about your tank is going to be better because you have if you combine them all together, you'd have a 35% better crew performance than the other person. So yeah, think about it in that way, and yeah, this is why you need Born Leader. Then, of course, as with everyone, rapid loading is the one to go with. Steady aim, these are basically staples, so it just is a flat 10% increase to your accuracy, which is always good. It means you're not going to miss as much. And, of course, the rapid loading increases your gun reload speed, which is essentially an increase of DPM by 10%, which is massive. So if you have 1,000 damage per minute, it's going to go up to 1,100. So say if you come up against an opponent that doesn't have it and you have it, if you had a 10-second reload, it would now become 9 seconds, so you'd have an extra second to pinpoint where you're going to shoot them before they've even had the chance to fire. So that's always good, and I would recommend this in every single tank that you play, regardless. All 4 of these are basically the ones you want to go with: 6 cents, Born Leader, Steady Aim, and Rapid Loading. Then it becomes a little bit more situational, where you want to pick the perks that actually will be specific to your tank or tank class. So for me personally, because I use so many different tanks, I don't pick ones that are necessarily specific to every single tank. So I will pick one that is best for medium tanks. I'd pick one that's best for light tanks. I'd also pick one that's best for heavy tanks. So when you've got crews, pick your designation for that crew. So for this one, it would be a tank destroyer. So I'm going to pick all of the tank destroyer related, possible related skills that I can put on my tank. And so what are those? Well, basically what you'd want is, say if you were playing in some pretty high alpha damage TD, something like a Russian TD, then you'd basically want some of the accuracy buffs. And so be sure to do that. Since we're playing in a German TD, which typically have good accuracy, then the perks we're going to be wanting to put are things that just increase our concealment. And as with the Jagdpanther, if we can increase our concealment, it's going to make it better. So that's exactly what we did with this one, picking Muffled Shot, which increases your shooting camouflage factor. So when you fire, you don't bloom out as much, so people can't spot you as easy when you fire, because when you do fire in game, you'll notice that actually you get spotted when you do fire. So for those of you who don't understand that, basically when you fire, your radius at which you get spotted by enemy tanks increases for a set duration of time and then decreases back to where it should be pretty much instantaneously. So when you fire, you're going to get spotted if someone's within that radius. Then of course, if you have 35% less, it won't bloom out as much, and so you may not get spotted. Then we of course have Green Thumb. It's basically 10% better camo, which means you won't get detected as easily when you're in a foliage. And then, of course, you also have Camo Expertise, which is just a flat 10% increase to your vehicle's camo factor, regardless of whether you're in a bush or anything. So in terms of priority, get Camo Expertise first. Then we did go with a full camo build, which is, of course, silent driving. which when you're moving in a tank, basically you can get spotted easier, and so silent driving decreases that effect. So you won't get spotted as easily when you're moving, because it will be 55% less bloom on that radius. So it will be 55% smaller difference between your initial one when you're stationary and when you're bloomed out at full speed at the without the perk. So it will be that distance smaller. It will be like a halfway point almost. Now, so that's the skills for the TD. Obviously, depending on what tank you're playing, make sure that you pick the right kind of perks. And if you do want to look at an in-depth guide into the perks, because we've got plenty on the channel, and you may want to do that, and I'll try and link that at the end of this video. But other than that, I think that's the key aspects that you need to think about. Obviously, we can get into a lot more detail as to how to learn the game and get better, and that's what we're aiming to do on the channel in the next couple of weeks, is try and promote some guides and how to get better at World of Tanks, at least from my perspective, because I have played 22,000 battles now roughly, with a 62% win rate. So I think it's fairly safe to say I know a little bit about the game. I've played it for 6 years, so it should be better than someone that's jumped on the game. But there we go. Hopefully they did help, and hopefully you kind of agree with what I'm saying. And of course, if you don't, make sure that you do let me know in the comment section down below, and give some people some other kind of alternative choices to what you got to do within World of Tanks when you first start on, from a logistics standpoint. There we go. Hopefully you did enjoy. Once again, I hope you'll join me in the next video, and if you do want to check out those other videos, they should be on screen right now. Other than that, goodbye.